Hi, I'm Rich Garling. I'm one of the hosts for Democratic Defenders. Our goal in these podcasts is to help you to understand what is really going on with our government and to try to make sense of it all so you can respond and hopefully make it run like it should. So, all right, folks, today I want to talk through something that's been weighing heavy on me. And honestly, if you've been following what's going on overseas, you probably feel it too. We're watching the United States get pulled into a really dangerous position, especially with Iran and the person steering the ship. Well, let's just say he's not exactly a student of military strategy or foreign policy. See, this isn't about politics, not about left or right. It's about competence. It's about how decisions get made. It's about how what happens when a president treats global conflict like it's a TV segment instead of a serious long-term strategic challenge. And now he's threatening Oman, pulling a major aircraft carrier out of the Pacific, and he's cutting joint exercises with South Korea. All at the same time, he's escalating with Iran. It's a pattern, and it's not a good one. So let's walk through this together, okay? So, Trump's been ramping up strikes on Iranian targets. He's hitting radar sites, missile positions, small naval assets. The Pentagon calls these shaping operations, which basically means softening up the defenses in case you want to do something bigger later. But here's the thing, none of this seems connected to a real strategy. There's no clear end goal. There's no diplomatic plan, no coordination with allies. It's just escalation for the sake of escalation. Iran's not folding. They're not panicking. They're not suddenly waving a white flag. They're doing what Iran always does, adapting, retaliating, waiting for the next unpredictable move. And unpredictability, that's not strategy. That's just chaos. Now let's talk about instinct for a second. When people talk about instinct and leadership, they're not talking about gut feelings. They're talking about pattern recognition, understanding adversaries, knowing how escalation works, seeing the long term consequences. Trump doesn't have that. And again, that's not me being political. That's based on years of documented behavior. He doesn't read briefings. He doesn't study foreign policy. He doesn't trust military planners. He doesn't even have a framework for how global power works. What fills the gap? Right now, it's impulse, ego, headlines, whatever he saw on TV that morning. And that's not how you handle Iran. It's a country that's been playing the long game for decades. And Iran isn't a simple adversary. They're not Iraq. They're not Afghanistan. They're not Libya. It's not a fragile state waiting to collapse. See, Iran is decentralized, they're resilient, they're certainly patient, and they're experienced in asymmetric warfare. And they're very good at exploiting U.S. political cycles. We've seen that happen before. They know how to wait out American presidents. They know how to retaliate without triggering full scale war. They know how to use their proxies to keep their fingerprints off things. So when Trump throws out threats like bombing energy plants, seizing islands, hitting nuclear sites, Iran doesn't crumble. They adjust, they reposition, they wait. And that's why this whole thing feels so reckless. Now, let's get into some of the latest twists. Trump's threatening Oman. And he literally said this on Fox News. He said, if Oman gets in the way, we'll bomb the shit out of them. Now, Oman is a country that's not even part of the conflict. They're a country that's been quietly trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which used to carry about 20% of the world's oil before all this started. And they're one of the few countries that's trusted by both Washington and Tehran. They're the adults in the room. They're the ones trying to de escalate. Threatening them doesn't just widen the conflict, it removes one of the only diplomatic pressure valves we have left. This is how wars expand unintentionally, not through careful planning, but through impulsive comments. Now, here's where things get even more concerning. You see, Trump's pulling the USS George Washington. It's one of our major aircraft carriers out of the Pacific to replace the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Middle East. But that leaves the Western Pacific, the region where China is most aggressive, without a U.S. carrier presence. And China's thrilled. They're already pushing the narrative to Japan and the Philippines and Indonesia and others. See, the U.S. is distracted. They're not reliable. They're not focused on Asia. This isn't just a military move, it's a message. And it's not a good one for us. America's ability to deter China depends on consistent, visible naval presence, and pulling a carrier out of the region to feed an impulsive Middle East escalation is honestly strategically reckless. And then there's the decision to cut joint military exercises with South Korea, exercises that are literally designed to deter North Korea. And Trump says, well, hey, I've got a very good relationship with Kim Jong un, so he doesn't think the exercises are necessary. South Korea's, well, they're playing it cool publicly. But let's be honest, this sends a terrible message. Just months ago, Trump's own defense secretary praised South Korea for strengthening the alliance. Now he's weakening it. And at the exact moment he's pulling a carrier out of Asia, it's like he's telling allies, hey, you're on your own. Now, I want to bring up a historical parallel because it is relevant here. See, back in the late 1930s, Joseph Stalin purged his military leadership. He executed or imprisoned thousands of officers, got rid of the people who actually knew what they were doing. So when Germany invaded in 1941, the Soviet Union was caught flat footed, strategically blind. The early months of the war were catastrophic. Now, obviously, Trump isn't Stalin, but the pattern's similar. This is when a leader distrusts its experts, ignores intelligence, replaces professionals with loyalists, and improvises on strategy, and treats foreign policy like a personal theater. The system loses both professional judgment and executive instinct. That's the danger. Stalin had instinct. Twisted, paranoid instinct, but instinct nonetheless. Trump doesn't have instinct, and he doesn't rely on expertise. That combination is what worries analysts and me. So the real risk, America's global positioning eroding even further. Well, let's put it all together here for you. See, threatening Oman undermines our diplomacy. Pulling the George Washington out of Asia weakens deterrence against China. Cutting exercises with South Korea sends a message of inconsistency. Escalating against Iran without strategy drains U.S. resources and attention. So, this is how global influence erodes, not through one big disaster, through a series of impulsive decisions that leave openings for adversaries. China sees an opening, North Korea sees an opening, Iran sees an opening, and allies see a United States that's distracted, unpredictable, and unreliable. See, history doesn't repeat itself perfectly, but it certainly warns us. When leaders ignore expertise and improvise strategy, nations pay the price. Right now, the United States is operating in one of the most volatile regions on earth without the steady hand that the moment demands. Not about politics, about competence, about the process, about understanding that military power isn't a toy. It's a tool that requires discipline, expertise, and strategic clarity. And when these things are missing, the risks grow fast.